Thank you for listening to Rossendale Radio's Play It Again. This interview was first broadcast on Rossendale Radio on the 13th of January 2021. In this episode, Marie Baistow from Mental Health Matters talks to artist Michael Howley about how his work has helped with his mental health.
104.7 Rossendale Radio.
Welcome. Hello everybody to Mental Health Matters. Let me get my formalities right. Thank you so much for Bob Chadwick there. Did a fantastic job as always, keeping us safe and entertained on the way home and whatever we're doing. So thanks for that, Bob. Mental Health Matters. It's come round again. This midweek Wednesday comes round very quickly. I have, like all of the shows before this, a great guest tonight sharing with us their expertise, their experience, their views on mental health, how they've helped themselves personally and other people. And I'm really excited to say it's an absolute passion of mine. I am no good at this, but I shouldn't say this, should I? If I, I should practice what I preach, and I shouldn't say we're no good at anything. We try to get better. But my art skills, I've got to say, I love doing artwork, and I always have, as when I've worked on the wards or in the community, and we've done art groups, never really led by myself, but I love getting, creative and just really pausing, zoning down, and like I say, the artwork, when my kids were small, I used to get away with it because they used to think the kids had done it. I've actually got a painting of mine up in the kitchen that they do. People who visit my home think that perhaps one of my children of 3 and 4 years old did it, but it was me. And I loved it. And why did I love it? Because it is so calming, it's so at ease, if you don't judge yourself. And our guest tonight can tell us lots of things about art. My goodness, Michael Howley is not only an artist, an acclaimed artist, and he's had his work shown within the Lancashire, Yorkshire, the Lakes District. I've been looking on his site today. On our website, we have some links. Finally got that right. I missed a Y off the Howley. Finally got that right. And you'll be able to see his studio. His paintings are absolutely exquisite. I'm going to let you tell it. I'm going to wait till he tells you a little bit about his paintings actually, but what really stood out for me was how Michael's used for himself and the people he works with to find the therapeutic use of art, to express themselves, to use, as he said, the inner artist. But like I say, he's coming up, so I'm not going to he's the best person to explain his views and his experience on using art creatively, and he is coming up after Pink Floyd, Comfortably Numb.
Like us on Facebook.
Facebook.com/Rossendale Radio.
And follow us on Twitter @Rossendale Radio.
Proud to be your local radio station. 104.7 Rossendale Radio, Lancashire.
We're about to meet the gentleman that requested that. Michael Howley, welcome. Welcome to Rossendale Radio.
Thank you so much.
I think it would help if I put the slider up, Michael, actually, because I was...
Mere details.
Do you know what? I think you should have done an arts and craft. I think you should have done a bit of arts with me before I actually sat in this seat.
Just to settle in.
Just to settle in, realign and pause, practice what we preach.
Absolutely.
But we're off and running now, so you're just going to have to cope with it.
No worries. We can do this.
Oh, thank you. So let's explain a little bit to our listeners who you are and why I invited you onto the show, and we will naturally muse and navigate through the story. I'm sure we will. So
yeah,
you're Michael Howley, and I put on our website today that you're an author and tutor. The tutor bit, obviously it started in the very formal way of college environment.
That's noticed.
Right. Yes. But as our conversation will move on, you have expanded and explored that tutor, teacher, helping people learn in different ways. And I think it's a lovely story. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, great.
So your interest, as I suppose with a lot of artists who can actually do, produce something that is sellable, let's say, which you do, and we know art, everyone can partake in art, but from a selling point of view, often people have an interest very early on in their years about art and develop those skills early, and I reckon you did, Michael. Yeah.
I did, yeah. And it was way back in 5th year when I started working with pastels in particular. It was the combination of soft pastels, which I'd been introduced to by a friend, and the landscape in particular, and our northern landscape that really inspired me. And so I from the beginning, I had to paint things that kind of moved me, inspired me. And I suppose spoke to the depth of me, to my soul. And so I responded to landscape always. I always lived in the shadow of Pendle Hill. And it's beautiful, it's majestic. It seems to reflect something of the divine to me. And so I just somehow had to find a voice for that. And art has been the vehicle. And it's expanded from that point, really.
Yeah, which is amazing. And it's you know, I know what the bio that I read about yourself, I loved that you'd put the words changing moods, that's what the landscape allowed you to capture. And I suppose for yourself, you've probably reflected that over the years, that while you'd recognised that the landscape was changing, you've made those connections about how we communicate as people, how we feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that often the landscape reflects our changing moods, you know. So we see the drama, the anger, if you like, of the clouds rolling over Pendle sometimes. And, you know, maybe that's how we're feeling on that particular day. Or perhaps I look across an empty landscape and I get reflected back to me that sense of solitude. That sense of silence and stillness, which can be comforting. It can be haunting too. Yeah.
Well, I think, very haunting for a lot of people. Some people can't sit very comfortably with silence. That's an art form, a different kind of art form in itself. Learning how to sit with something that might initially make us feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely, and I think that art encourages you to sort of stand and stare, you know. So, like the poet said, you know, so what is life if so full of care we have not time to stop and stare? I think art gives us permission to do exactly that and to respond to the beauty of the things that we're seeing and to find expression for them. Okay, not necessarily immediately. You won't be able to pick up a pencil and a paintbrush and immediately be able to capture that thing in front of you, but you might be able to find some ways of responding to it, some initial sketches or putting down some colours, some things that speak to you from that particular landscape or scene. So it does take us into that place of stillness and of contemplation.
Which, the more, as I'm listening to you speak now, Michael, I've always had a value for arts, for mental health. As a practitioner of 20 years in mental health, that's something that's evolved over time because I've witnessed it. But even just listening to you right now, I don't think I've ever, till this moment in time, and this is me being very honest with you, noticed the completed dimensions and dynamics that the art can actually deliver. Because I just made a couple of notes there while you were just in that very small, brief description that you gave. It was quite powerful because for me, you were explaining the pause of mind, the pause of the body benefiting from the muscles and the skeleton relaxing and the nervous system. And the pause to sit with uncomfortable situations, so that practice of sitting with anything that's uncomfortable. And also the pause to find descriptions and the pause to find wriggle room to wonder and curiosity of what you might be thinking, and that's just thinking about art providing pause, and that's so many different dimensions of pause it offers, just that on its own.
Absolutely. Well, the studio which I have co-created with my fiancée Jo Aldersley, and with Jacqueline Smith, textile artist, is called Soul Space. And, it's a title, it's a name that has kind of evolved, I suppose, out of my experience, my life, and my desperate need for such a space as an individual, as an artist, and the desire to share that with others, and it is just about that. It's about creating soul space, time to listen to your own depths, time to listen to what the Spirit has to say to you, time to pause and look at the landscape as it truly is, this piece of fruit on a surface as the light falls across it, these beautiful shells and their shapes and forms. Time to step aside from the demands of a crazy life that we have created for ourselves as humans, and actually pause and see something else, move to a different beat, to a different pulse, and sink to a deeper and lower, and at the same time higher place.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because like you say, it's that vibe, that beating into something that's more than us. And I think certainly over the years I've certainly learned to, and maybe it's an age thing, maybe it's an experience thing, that you start learning, looking for answers and looking for heal and things to help. But certainly the respect I have for the value of the hills around us, the trees, the water, the colours, like you say, the changing sky. I can be totally wowed by a sky, and my immediate sense of being changed in a flash, and obviously if I was trying to create that scene either from a photograph or from memory, or from I'm assuming it's very difficult to do it as it's changing, but that would offer me that pause, that layer, that settle down, because it would give me something to really focus on. So it's mindfulness at its best, really, because it's kind of looking at the environment around us, but having a very squared off vision, because obviously what I would be about to put on my canvas, that I'm kind of using almost, a binocular look of what's in front of me, and that is mindfulness at its best. That is the core concept of reducing our bigger world into something very focal in front of us.
It is, and as we walk through landscape, we feel the layers of atmosphere. We feel the temperature. We sense the whole thing, and we're in it as a small thing, looking at a great thing, and as artists, our challenge is to somehow try and find ways of reflecting that on a flat surface, and it's a wonderful challenge, actually, and it asks quite a lot of us, and we wonder, well, how are we going to go about that? The Impressionists, for example, just created a sense of those layers of atmosphere through the marks that they made and the subtlety of the shifts of colours. I, as a painter, I use soft pastels. I use my hands to blend them, and they aren't naturally geared to absolutely perfect, pristine detail. They leave a little bit to the imagination, and the texture of the surface helps to reflect the texture of the atmosphere, the layers of atmosphere that I'm seeing and sensing and feeling. And so it's a whole new world. It's a whole new language, and it's a joy. It's an absolute joy.
Yeah, and also You also spoke about expression. You've just touched on expression there, but the language, as you've said, not only is it an expression of language of how you're feeling, I think it probably allows people to find a language, because sometimes people can't find words, they can't articulate how they're feeling because they perhaps don't know how they're feeling. So first they explore, and they need a framework to be able to understand what might be going on. So art, as you're explaining it, and the environment around us and our scenery will allow that space to wonder, to learn. And people who are brand new to this idea of this concept, obviously your studio and what you offer as a tutor and a teacher is you're explaining to people these concepts.
Yes, to some extent, or creating the environment in which they can explore these things in not a way that's necessarily been articulated in words, but actually it's a kind of almost like an invisible process. You know, you create the environment. You encourage students to step out and have a go. You help them with the language of colour, of tone, of texture, of gesture. Yeah. You expose them to the work of other artists. You share some inspiration and resources and the work that you do. And you allow them to find their own personal sense of expression in whatever materials they want to work in. And it's really interesting. It's dynamic. It's surprising. And I have a group of students that I work with online today, actually in the afternoon. Wonderful set of students from Soul Space, combined two groups into one remotely during lockdown. And they are just working in their kitchen or in their bedroom or in whatever space they can find. Each week they'll set their stall out, and they're working on individual projects, and they are discovering and working through this language, and they are feeling the benefit of it because they share a sense of community and connection to each other and to the visible world, even in this lockdown period. And they're an absolute joy to work with. We laughed today because we had such a nightmare with technology, and I said I was going on this program tonight about art and good mental health, and I said, and this is just perfect. It's just perfect. I can't speak to anybody. I can't see anybody. We're working with Skype, and technology was frustrating us. So I thought I'd probably appear tonight as a scattered, broken individual trying to articulate something about art and good mental health, when actually was in a very bad place after that workshop. But they were great. We have such a connection with each other, and they have adapted well to technology when technology was not necessarily their first thing. They've just adapted across brilliantly, and it's an honour really to work with them, and a joy as ever.
Yeah, I mean, just knowing how everyone's had to adapt to technology, I'm feeling your pain, but I had to laugh when you were saying about, turning up like in a mental frazzle, because I thought, I'm going to say, I think I beat you on that today, Michael. I think you nearly saw my
You may have got the edge. Well done.
You may have seen my hair stood on end. It's not normally this curly. It's just stress.
Well, you've got the headphones every now and then to press it back down again.
But laughing aside, what we do know the value of is, and I think I genuinely do espout this, that neither, thankfully you're sharing, not everything goes to plan, and certainly not everything's gone to plan for me today, and I don't think it's gone for Mel outside, who's coming on in a midweek special show afterwards, because on a serious note, life doesn't, does it? It doesn't go to plan. We would love it to go to plan, if only we could do those things to do lists and everything just ticks off like some kind of sliding, like sliding on silk. And
that would be wonderful.
And we're succeeding, and it's turned out exactly how we wanted to do it, and we didn't need to adapt, and nothing broke, and nothing didn't, not turn up. But what you're suggesting, Michael, is, and certainly all guests that join me on this show with their fantastic ideas, is they're saying these are these things in life that we could try to help with our mental health when this thing we call life goes wrong, because the nature of life is things go wrong. We are terribly tested. We have filled our days with lots of responsibilities and roles, and there are, in just existing from morning to night and feeding ourselves and meeting the financial demands of this world at the moment, when everything is challenging, that we do need something to balance and combat the stress within our body, the physicality that happens to us in states of stress.
We do, and sometimes we need it to even to express some of that. My own journey over the last few years has not been easy in personal terms, and there have been times when life has really thrown me some curveballs, and I felt exiled from the previous life that I had. And even mental health. I suffered with stress as a teacher, and stress-related depression. So I've been through a fair amount of emotional turmoil through the last 10 to 15 years, probably 20 years really. And I found that through all of that, art has helped enormously in a number of ways. Sometimes it's helped me to escape a little bit to another safe space, and just create something, and feel like one part of my life is still sort of holding together. Or it has helped me to just go into the studio and articulate the frustration, the anger, or the depression, or the whatever it was, from my heart, from my soul, in through colours, through gestures, through choice of materials and the way in which I've worked with them, through not knowing, through going, on a journey with the piece of work that I'm doing. All of it has somehow helped, and having these groups and the interaction with other students and the way that they gel together and value that lifeline at the moment in lockdown. All of it. It contributes to good mental health, really.
Absolutely, and certainly, again, another thing that I've never thought of that art is presenting itself is the unknown, your end product. So not being certainly. I know I've worked with something called Zentangle, which is just different shapes, it's straight shapes, and actually we use it a lot with people who are very critical of themselves, would be seen as perfectionists, would be seen as maybe given a label with OCD or traits that have, everything's got to be perfect before we move on, and it is just a form of artwork where it's challenging that a little bit, where it's working with the rules as they move and not having to be able to go back and correct something. And certainly, as I was listening to yourself there, I was thinking that's exactly, you could just go on forever, couldn't you, for the benefits of art, for the person that can produce something that can sell or not. It's the process is what I'm hearing. It is the process, and I think that if you create the right environment where people can just simply go on the journey and actually let go of the internal critic and the external critic. There's nobody over the shoulder saying that's dreadful, or anything like you don't want to be following that. You want to be getting a day job. Anything of those negative comments that came from way back in the past. We don't need them. What we need is support. What we need is encouragement. What we need is an environment of creativity, of hope, of possibility, and an absolutely open horizon. And when you create that together in an environment like a studio, people begin to blossom, and they're prepared to fail. They're prepared to allow things to just happen and not be that great, and for things to happen and then be surprisingly good. Because they've allowed themselves the space to, if you like, in inverted commas, fail, or for the thing not to be commercially successful or look fantastic in other people's eyes. It's about experimenting with materials. It's about learning to play. It's about having permission to play, and to just experience growth and some freedom through that whole process. Yeah, and like you say, permission to play, I think is really, really important, isn't it?
Yeah, from ourselves and from others.
Yeah, because we're very much, perhaps if we don't understand the enormity of what art can bring to us as humans in our growth and our mental health and our stability and staying sane, then people do need to give themselves permission. But you're right, that other people need to be able to give them permission that is a very viable, important creativity, activity to invest your time in, and allow space in your calendar, in your day, to pursue that actively. But it's not.
Yeah, well, if you think about ourselves as children, we did that almost automatically, didn't we? And we weren't afraid, and we just did it, and it was quite wonderful. Yeah. And it's Picasso, I think, that said, "No, I know it. It's about learning to be that child again, if you like, to draw as a child again, and to have the mental freedom to be able to just express that thing, to do that, to make those marks, and not to worry too much about it. And surprisingly, as adults, we find that quite difficult, and we've got to almost unlearn what we've learned.
Absolutely. And as you're saying, the medium and mode of art and everything it brings is allowing that to happen. It's actually executing those behaviours, it's triggering those responses, it's gently creating those scenes for that all to happen.
It is.
Now I am very interested. I just looked at my time, and I do this every week, so I'm like, oh wow, I need to get to the question of how. I'm going to play a song, some messages, and a song, and then we're going to talk about that transition, because you've so clearly and eloquently just travelled beyond what I expected, to be honest, to be able
thank you for that.
Really sell why art is so important for people to just hold with two hands and bring into their life right now. They have nothing to lose, nothing at all, and certainly yourself, you provide that type of environment. But equally, there's lots of areas on YouTube and lots of free areas and lots of people to start exploring it, as you said, exploring it. But I am very interested where that transition, because there was obviously a lot of reflection where you were coming from that. As I said right at the beginning, we introduced you that you were a tutor. You're still a tutor, but a very different style tutor. And I know that you have designed courses for people with particular mental health. And I'm just interested in just learning a little bit more about that after, like I say, the messages and the song. Would that be all right, Michael?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Come back.
Dedicated to the Rossendale Valley, this is your very own Rossendale Radio.
Anyone that's just joined us, welcome. We have probably 15 minutes of the show left, and we have a fantastic guest with us, Michael Howley, who is an artist and tutor. And for anyone who, like I said, just joined us right now, I'm just going to give you an absolute express of, I'm absolutely captured with Michael, I really am, and already I'm sold on arts being really helpful for our mental health and staying well and being the heal and finding ways to express ourselves in language. But listening to Michael, for me, it's really even widened my respect for art and how it can help a person express themselves, find pause, learn new ways, unlearn unhelpful ways, find the value, hope and possibilities, and sit with uncomfortable situations perhaps, and have an understanding that we are a small part of the big picture, but equally that find that value and connection with the wideness around us. So I'm absolutely blown away, and certainly Michael's here to share with yourselves that art is an excellent form to have in our life and be guided, and that's really where I want to start my questioning with yourself, Michael. So you were a teacher, and you were at a college, and you were working with people with mental health, with recognised mental health difficulties. How did that help you transition to your current day-to-day support of your students and learning everything I've just shared there and more, because obviously you're the expert? How did that transition?
I think that working with mental health groups, they're often in small community settings, and I say small, the groups were small, and so actually I was simply working with individuals, and just trying to, as I went along, to tailor what we were doing to those individuals. And so always being sensitive to how they're responding to, this material, that material, or this subject or that, what their interests are, and trying to encourage them to just, be confident enough to follow those interests through with the support. And so, in a way, it wasn't dramatically different than any other art teaching that I do. It's about creating the right environment fundamentally, and thinking. I'm seeing this reconnecting, but hopefully I'm still.
Yeah,
you can still hear me here.
Yeah, I can. I saw earlier poor connection. I thought I'm ignoring that. I can still hear you.
That's fine. Sorry. So yeah, it's not essentially different. At Soul Space, I've surrounded us with exciting sort of source material, lots of books, natural forms, photographs to work from, lots of different materials, to play with, to experiment with, to just, feel at home with. The environment itself is full of light. We've got 5 windows over the landscape. It's the second floor of a mill building. It's got a massive table in the centre. And so my experience in these different groups, the community groups in Art and Soul in Padium, with fellow artists there for a while, it's led to this latest studio, which I've been in now for 3 or 4 years, and it's creating the right physical environment. It's about creating the right emotional support, if you like. Even an invisible spiritual environment. I hope and pray that I bring the light that is inside of me into whatever it is that I do, to wherever I go, and that in itself creates an invisible bubble that holds this all together, and through that the spirit works in absolutely mysterious and wonderful ways. And I can hear my students laughing as we speak, in thinking about today's experience online, and how the spirit weaves through technology or doesn't, but it really is about relationship, and it's about working closely with people, and it's about listening and being present and responding, and having all that is possible to have around you to help to support that process that goes on and that encourages good mental health and good interrelationships, and a kind of joyfulness of life, sometimes a challenge of life as well, experienced together and overcome together.
Yeah, and that is a really word that's resonating. How supportive I know that you would be to your students, just spending this
yes, and they're
time.
To each other,
Yeah, but then sometimes we generate that energy, don't we? We generate that feeling within the group that we're going to be, and maybe we've never experienced that before, and we really thrive from it. And it's finding that common joy between ourselves. And I suppose you've commonly found people being very, very surprised about their improvements in mental health.
Absolutely. I think so, and it sort of happens as a byproduct of that, because you're kind of you're just settling into a shared activity there. You're kind of allowing something to come to life again inside of you that has maybe been laying dormant for some time, and you're kind of sharing that with others, and because you're fostering that environment of mutual support, then as you're developing, people aren't criticising, they're encouraging, and they're being careful about what it is they say and how they respond to each other, because that's the environment which is created. It's a quietly wonderful thing that we do.
It's magic. That's what I think it is. Absolutely magic. And if anyone's taken anything from today, me and Michael are saying, craft, art, it's magic. Just get there, explore. Well, listen, I want to say absolutely. I want to say thank you so much for joining us this evening. Yeah, we've come to the end of the show. I'm definitely going to have you on back on. I'm being captured, Michael. So thank you very much. Thank you, and you take care.
Thank you. Bye. Yeah, thank you. Bye, Mary. Thank you very much.
Michael.
At home, in the office, in the car, wherever you are, you can listen to 104.7 Rossendale Radio.
Thank you for tuning in. Please do check out our website www.rossendaleradio.com